new channel. The sun is out, mainly because it's halfway through the year. Now, if I want to do booktubing, what sort of thing shall I do halfway through the year? Oh, I know. Here's a wrap-up of everything that I've read so far this year. Part 1. News and reviews, books, horrors and shares, textbooks and spooks. It rhymes visually! Yeah, everyone, Tak here, and this is Town Tak's Books and Spooks. This is a place where I basically talk about, like, books and horror and shiz. Yeah, so I think I want to do for my first one. And I was like, yeah, you know what? It's mid-year, okay? It's summer. There's a lot of book talk activity going on with Summerween and things like that. So I thought, you know, I figured this is probably a good place to start. I will apologise though, it is very hot, and it's hot to the point that I'm probably involuntarily pheromone masking right now. So I will warn you at some point. It is because of that, as this video goes on, I'll get hotter and hotter, and therefore sexier and sexier. Right, as I'm not one for long intros, I'm going to get straight to it. The first book that I had completed and read this year, started obviously in January, where most years start, is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. It was a book that won the vote in the horror book club that I'm in on Goodreads. It's basically about a waitress who basically she ends up finding a lost boy. One thing leads to another, decides to sort of realise the boy needs protecting from his aggressive father, who's basically chasing them both down. And there's a lot more to it than that. Just read the book. I don't want to say too much because it's better going into as blind as you can. I will say I was expecting a werewolf story, and if you are going into it expecting a werewolf story, cool, but it is so much more. It had like Terminator vibes for me. You think of some sort of the chase, like a chase thriller is probably the best genre label that I can give it. A lot of the book had me thinking about Torchwood, but in America, and the X-Files. If you're a fan of either of those shows, like I am, it's definitely a book I would recommend to you. There's also some cool pop culture references, which is always a plus for me. But as far as the writing's concerned, Cassidy's writing style is probably the most accessible that I've come across in a while. The storytelling, the pacing, there's so many, for horror fans and gore fans, there's so many gruesome moments to get satisfaction from, and some of the imagery in this book will very possibly stay with you for the rest of your life. Best example for me anyway is part in the book. I mean, I can't say too much, but basically all I'm going to say is constantly screaming woman that will probably haunt me for the rest of my life. And the cause of that constantly screaming woman, the description of what led to that, will also probably stay with me, unfortunately, for the rest of my life. As far as everything else is concerned, all characters feel unique from each other. No characters seem to blend in. You can tell who you're reading, who you're following, and as a result of this, I will definitely, I say it's my favourite Nat Cassidy experience. So I will definitely be reading Nat Cassidy's work in the future, and it gets the 5 stars from me. Okay, next up, the second book I read at the beginning of the year was The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. I would have the visual aid. The physical book somewhere, but I believe my housemate still has my copy. Housemaid is basically about a down on her luck woman manages to land a job as a living housemaid for a rich family, and let's just say that things aren't as they seem. I decided to read this as the film was coming out, and I had previously, not long before, finished reading The Crash by the same author, which I really enjoyed. I believe I gave it around 4.5 stars. I mean, I planned on rushing through it as I wanted to finish in time for seeing the movie in the theatre. I'm one of those people, I have to read the book before the film. If I know there's a book first, then I have to read the book first. And honestly, sometimes that sort of reasoning for me choosing the book, it can sometimes for me make that feel like a bit of a chore. But like I said, I did rush through it, and not just for that reason, but yeah, it didn't feel like a chore here. Accessible, yet still gripping, writing style. I was always constantly throughout the whole thing, just like, oh, just one more page, just one more page, just one more page, so that kept me going. Pacing was fine. I mean, it did feel like I was getting two books in one, but like from my previous experience of Frida McFadden's work, that's kind of how she structures her stories. Usually when the reveal comes, but like the way she does it is not usually such a jarring thing. It's like you feel led into the change, the slight change of narrative. The character work was okay. It didn't overstay its welcome. I liked who I felt I was meant to like. I hated who I felt I was meant to hate. The POV can be a little jarring when it's changed. But like I said previously as well, that I was kind of prepared for this from reading her work before. All in all, an enjoyable, what I call popcorn thriller. So that's 5 stars for me again. And up next, felt going a little bit darker. I wanted to test my metal, should I say, and boy did it test my metal. And what tested my metal quite far was The Black Farm by Elias Witherow. The Black Farm is about a couple who mutually decide that they should end their own lives. They do so, and they find themselves in a sort of purgatory as a result of that, where everybody who has done the same thing go afterwards. And then there's just a whole lot of mad stuff going on, and mad stuff, I mean, I'll put trigger warnings up. To me, it felt like a slow burn in parts, although there was always something happening, which I know sounds like a bit of a contradiction, but I mean, I was just confused as I was writing the review, and I was like, it's slow paced, but I didn't necessarily feel totally bored. Like, is something just I was keep going through. I mean, I think a lot of it had to do with probably morbid curiosity more than anything, but that may be down to Witherow's writing style, but that's probably why it may have seemed a little bit tad too overlong for me. So yeah, the gross stuff, shall we just say, felt a tiny bit over gratuitous to me at times, and I do have a high tolerance of aspects of extreme horror and splatterpunk. Being morbid, like I said, morbid curiosity kept me going, and I found myself continued to be drawn in. I mean, even if it was just for the clearly intended anti-suicide fable that it was. I mean, this book can tell you that it could be worse, much worse, much worse. Yeah, to describe it, it's as if Matthew Stokoe of Cow's fame or infamy was commissioned to write like a Silent Hill story, but like the devs and the producers and whatever were like, yeah, can we tone it down a bit? Which is probably why I enjoyed it, because I'm a big fan of sort of Silent Hill and survival horror and stuff in general, and I got a sort of vibes from it. Like I said, like I was reading the Silent Hill book, and it still had, compared to that franchise as well, it still had the protagonist's sort of character development and a way to look into themselves and these horrible things that are making them look into themselves and judge themselves, hold themselves accountable, which is probably the main reason why I enjoyed it. And I will get around to reading the sequel. It's on my TBR. So it's like an extra point for character development. Oh, and if you can't handle the first, shall we say, encounter, then yeah, the rest of the book is probably not for you. So if you want to judge to see where your boundaries are in the book, and you can't take that initial encounter on the farm, yeah, that should probably give you some indication of how you're going to feel about the rest of the book. Overall, though, all that makes it a 3 stars from me. Next book I read was part 3 of a series, so I won't go into this particular book as much, and that is Michael Grant's Lies from the Gone series. Basically, the series starts with a group of kids whose parents have disappeared all of a sudden. Anyone over above 15, the age of 15, has disappeared, and they're basically underneath this big dome, and it's basically about survival. And it's best way to describe it from me as well, because superpowers have been developed with some people as well. It's sort of, think Lord of the Flies meets X-Men. The third book, I mean, like I said, I can't really say too much about the third book in case people haven't read the first or second book, but it's a natural progression. There's a lot of you can see where Grant's planned out this whole thing, and he knows this is only the third book now in what he clearly possibly planned. I mean, how many is it now? I think it's about 9 books now, 9 or 10. But it's probably the best, and it's the one I went through the quickest. I mean, and imagine a town. All the characters are very distinctive. There's a lot on what do you expect from Lord of the Flies, about letting the inmates run the asylum, and how people who would, shall we say, have less life experience learn how to survive in these situations. There's a supernatural element as well with how the whole thing comes about, and it's constantly keeping you guessing throughout, as far as particularly as I am. It keeps progressing the reveal and changing, but possibly changing, we don't know. But if you haven't read Michael Grant's Gone series, I highly recommend that you read the series. This series I've given it the biggest, the highest rating so far. I think the The other two books I gave about 4 stars. This one I gave 4.5 stars. And again, I can't say too much about why, because I don't give too much away. But Michael Grant's Gone. Check it out. So now we're going into March. The first book of March was another book selected by my Goodreads horror book club, and that is Off Season by Jack Ketchum. This book is basically, it's got just think Hills of Eyes, all that sort of thing. You've got a group of people going into a cabin for a holiday, and there's a certain group of locals. They're not quite right. So basically, your inbred cannibal sort of crew. The pacing was really off for me, especially in the first 2 acts. Never have I personally read a author's clear attempt at character building to the point where it was getting tedious to result in still such bland and ununique and indifferentiable in can't tell them apart like characters. It was almost as if Ketchum was trying to make the story seem a lot more, for want of a better term, highbrow, I guess, than it actually is. And I can't help but feel throughout the whole thing that if Ketchum wrote the story with just a tinsy little bit more self-awareness, it would have been a nice piece of some, run-of-the-mill popcorn splatterpunk literature. I mean, I was a little bit disappointed because it was the first Jack Ketchum book that I read. And from this book, I'm not sure what all the hype is about. Maybe I should have read The Girl Next Door first, which is where a lot of people have said to me, which is, where to start with Ketchum. That's still on my TBR, and the sequel to this, I still have on my TBR. So I'll see how it goes with it, even though this one got 2.5 stars from me. Next up, also again, my book club usually votes for 2 books in a month. The second one for this was Near the Bone by Christina Henry. It's basically about a couple living in a secluded cabin, wintry surroundings. There's a forest, there's a monster in the forest. She's also in a very abusive relationship, so there's a lot of trigger warnings there. And it's basically about her being, I guess, being stuck between a rock and a hard place. And honestly, when I was reading it, I was just so bored. Kind of looking forward to it because I was getting sort of Shyamalan, like Village vibes possibly. And I will give it some credit. It was a little suspenseful at first, but by about halfway through, honestly, it just got so tedious and so just nothing. The fact that nothing was happening, I just didn't really care anymore. I guess I could say that I could sort of appreciate what the writer was trying to do. I mean, I got the feeling that she was trying to sort of Ridley Scott Alien the whole horror of it, that less is more, and the building up of the tension, but just I think it's kind of risky to put that or try to get that across and get that sort of feeling across maybe in prose form. This was a risk that to me brought no reward. And there are also things, therefore, little tension that was built within me. There was the odd moment that just seemed to come out of nowhere and just throw out whatever tension and suspense that I felt at the moment. For example, all I'll say is, if you know the sandwich scene, and So yeah, I was bored. How I didn't DNF it. It was a struggle. It was a chore. It was a test of endurance. So for that, I will give it 2.5 stars. Okay, next up now we head into April, and April was a pretty good month. The first book that I read in April, which I was very, very lucky to get an ARC copy for. ARC, advanced reader copy. Was The Caretaker by Marcus, I want to say it's pronounced Cleaver. It's basically about a woman who gets a job for 3 days house sitting. All she has to do is follow the rights. I mean, that is less than what the official synopsis says on Goodreads, and even from saying what I've said, I already feel like I've said too much. I absolutely loved this book. First thing I thought from reading it, it is perfect for this from Mike Flanagan project. It had that sort of vibe in prose form. Like the filmmaker's work, it is a tinsy bit of a slow burn, but you eventually get to see why. The character work, their experiences, their feelings, especially the protagonist, all adds to the themes that I got from the story, which I will get to later. No two characters ever felt the same. The scene setting, the tension building, there's some genuinely shocking and creepy moments. I mean, with the writing style, hardly any of the book ended up feeling like a chore for me. And the more I read, the more I felt like I was going to get the decent payoff that I was hoping for and that I thought it would deserve. Now, I know the ending sort of divides people, and it's a big water cooler moment amongst the community. Some people either felt unsatisfied with the ending, and on the other end, some people even felt that it set up well for a sequel. Me, neither. I think this book ended perfectly where it needed to. I feel like any more would sort of dilute the themes that I received from the story. Those themes being depression, grief, guilt, and the main one for me was OCD. I mean, just how the whole thing is based around following rites and following rituals, the panic, the second guessing, that pessimistic sort of view and outlook that you will get from failing these rites. It all, to me, and I'm talking from personal experience, it all felt very like people who want to understand what OCD feels like, especially what I call habitual OCD. You know, like knock the lights off on and off 3 and 4 times before you leave the house, etc., that sort of thing. Read this book, because that book, it left me shaken after reading it, and in a good way. That's what the author intended, and for that I just think it's perfectly written, it's perfectly told, and I would recommend this book to absolutely anyone. I initially rated this book 4.75 stars because of the slightly slow burn at the beginning, but the fact, I mean, months later now, I'm talking about it the way I am, how it's stuck with me, the effect it's had on me. I've bumped it up to 5 stars. So, yeah, I would, get out there and read it. Okay, next up, we've got another book that I read with the Horror Book Club, and that is Fever House by Keith Rawson. In a nutshell, this book is about, well, it starts with 2 career criminals who are on a job, and they find a hand in a fridge, and it's discovered that basically that hand has anyone that comes near it go, shall we say, a little batshit crazy. And basically the rest of the book, you got rock stars, agents, obviously career criminals, and how it's basically affecting things around them. I really wanted to like this more. as it had like those sort of crime horror vibes, and figured that it would be something a little bit different. Something I've personally never read in prose, only seen in movies like the works of Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. I was sort of expecting a sort of those filmmakers meeting Clive Barker vibes, which I got to eventually. And as there are a few things that made reading this a bit of a chore. First of all, there's the shift from prose to script, kept taking me out of the story, time jumping, some what I found to be quite filler-esque character work. I found it especially tiring when there's so many characters, a lot with their own POVs, all sort of all spread out and sort of cut into their own individual chapter changes, which for me messed a lot with the pacing. It took a lot to sort of come across the actual horror element of it, which again, I think it was Near the Bone. I could see what the author was trying to do. Again, is a very risky approach to take in prose horror. I did enjoy the story, and the last act was, I mean, when it hit the fan, it hit the fan. So because of that alone, I will be interested in reading the sequel. But for now, this book gets 3 stars from me. Okay, last but definitely not least, we've got The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. This book's basically about, if you don't know already, it's about a girl whose home life has basically been turned upside down continually. Her dad has left. There's a new man in her mum's life, who is probably not the best of men, and that's an understatement. And you sort of see her slowly sort of mentally deteriorate, for want of a better words, into madness. She becomes incredibly unhinged, manipulative, vengeful, and she, because of the sort of meals she's been brought up with her family, she has developed an unhealthy fascination with eyes. I don't really want to go any more into that. Something you should just read for yourself. It's a well-paced, slow burn psychological thriller. Even if the time jumps reset the tension meter back to 0 at times a tiny bit. The writing style was so immersive to me. Character work, it was an enjoyable ride. Even if a character becoming previously uncharacteristically manipulative seemed to come out of nowhere. But the journey of her coming undone is beautifully done from then on. Very, very descriptive writing style, but at the same time not too flowery for my tastes. Example is an extremely well written sequence. I mean, I think there's more than one sequence in there, and they're just very, very vivid nightmare scenes, and they done so well. And it was literally, I could see everything, and what I saw was absolutely terrifying. Overall though, it got me very excited to see what else Monica Kim had in store for us. Hint, be sure to check out part 2 of this video. And that book got a 4 stars from me. So that's the end of the first part for me, my reading wrap up from January to April. Hopefully I'll get April to June out to you soon. Please like, subscribe, comment. I'd love to. I love book talk, so to have a chat and hear your opinions on any of these books would be fun to hear. But until then, tag out.